rocking.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. What is going on, everybody? What is going on out there? Hello and welcome back to On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepherdson, and today is Wednesday, September the 4th, 2024, years after zero. Racing is back, GNCC is back, and OTP is back in your life with a brand new episode, this rendition of OTP Tuesday, but it's on a Wednesday. After GNCC, I had to go up to Pittsburgh for some business stuff, and then got back at about 11:30 last night, unpacking everything, putting everything away, and tried to do a show, and my brain was not functioning, so therefore we pushed it to today. So sorry for the delay. I know we're a day late and $1 short, maybe a couple months late by some calculations, but we're back. We're back in action. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of stuff that happened after Snowshoe. As far as I sold my business the week after Snowshoe, so that whole week after when we were going to do the race recap, ended up I had to teach them how to use all the equipment. Then we had to load all the equipment. Then I had to take it back out. That took most of the week. The following week, my dad was actually in a car accident, totaled his truck, broke his neck. Actually has another neck surgery coming up. And then, life happens. One thing led to another, and then it got to the point where we were so far gone that I really just didn't even know how to start talking about it in the middle of summer break, in the middle of this brief little off-season patch. So I do apologize for the delay. There's some other things in there, but this is probably my 6th, 7th time trying to record this show. Tried to record a show last week. Didn't really know how to talk about it. Didn't really know what to say. So we're just going to leave it at that. And then we're going to move forward to racing as if nothing ever happened. Maybe more will come into the light as we get back on a regular schedule and get back to the program that is sponsored by Beta Motorcycles, the official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast. They've been family owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro trials and dual sport motorcycles that are known for, you guys know what they're known for. They're known for their premium quality and rideability. Head over to betausa.com to find more information on their available models or find a dealer near you to get yours today. At Snowshoe was delivered a 200 race edition, so a Beta 200 race edition. And let me tell you what, I think there's an option to buy back these motorcycles after we get done using them for the year. I believe the 200 might be the one that I buy and keep forever. It is that good. I'm telling you what, I have had such a great time riding this motorcycle. It is, every time I talk to somebody that did beta demos or rode all the beta bikes, everyone says that the 200 was the most fun to ride. So I wanted to see what the hubbub was all about. My best overalls personally racing came on a 125. So I ride small bores well. And so I was like, 200 is going to feel like a 125, but it's going to have even more power. I mean, I'm a little bit over 200 pounds. I was 206.2 pounds to be exact this morning. And the 200, I have not yet found a situation where that thing did not have plenty of power. I think it's like 20-something pounds lighter than a 300. The 250s and the 125s are built on different frames, different chassis, and the 200 is on the 125 frame and chassis. So it just feels so agile, so nimble, so light, and has plenty of power. So me personally, I've been loving the 200. I rode it at Snowshoe, rode it a little bit around the house, rode it at the TKO Enduro, convinced myself I was a hard Enduro guy there for a minute. I'd see some rocks, and there was no one around to laugh at me when I fell, so I was like, let me go try these sections. And it was fun, man. Rode it at this past weekend's GNCC in the mud. It's been such a great bike. All of the betas have been good, but this 200 is a lot of fun. Head over to betausa.com to find more information. Check it out. Find the model that fits for you. They got flavors for different everything that you want to do. Josh Strang, for instance, one of the talks of the town. He was on a beta this past weekend. In his beta, it ain't a lady if it ain't 480. A lot of people have been asking, is he on the 430? Is he on the 390? Is he on the 350? Is he on the 450? For some reason, no one ever said, is he on the 480? When in fact, he is on a 480, courtesy of Vince Strang Motorcycles in Inverell, Australia. Papa Strang jumped in. They got him a beta. He picked it up on Tuesday, I think, of last week. I think it had like 2.1 hours on it when he unloaded it at the track. And he put on a good ride, solid ride. But yeah, Josh Strang joining the beta family, doing it on his own, JS Racing out there. I know he's got a lot of companies backing him up, so it's cool to see him obviously splitting ways with the brand that he was riding and still find a way to get back out to the racetrack and continue on this year 18 of racing as a professional in the United States for the old number 7, the old number 17, the old number 114, the old number 1 in several different series. But yeah, check them out. This past weekend, GNCC did, in fact, kick off at the Buckwheat 100 up in Newburgh, West Virginia, just south of Morgantown, West Virginia, where I had to go to charge my car in the middle of a WVU versus Penn State football game. So it was a madhouse up there. But we got it done. GNCC is back to racing, and there's history being broken. You see it reported as over and over again. Grant Davis becomes the second XC2 winner to win from the second row. There was a lot of hubbub flying around the pits about him being, well, actually, he's kind of the first XC2 rider, which I understand because Josh Toth spent 3-4 years in the XC1 class before coming back this year and racing select rounds in that XC2 class, but he still did it from the second row. But the one thing that I have not seen reported as much, and by as much I mean by nobody other than me, so I could be completely incorrect, but I believe Grant Davis became the youngest overall winner in GNCC history. Now, if there's something way back when, like in the grassroots of it, I might be missing it, but kind of going back through the years and kind of thinking about it and doing deductive reasoning, Grant Davis just turned 18 just a few months ago. And from my estimations, I do believe that he is the youngest winner of a GNCC that we have ever seen. There's been guys that have come into the XC1 class at very, very, very young ages, guys like Stu Baylor, guys like Grant Baylor, but they did not get their first official wins until later on, much past that 18 point. But I do believe that Grant Davis is the youngest winner at a GNCC, which is quite the task and quite impressive, especially the way that he battled back through the pack. And Gus Reardon led the overall for like the first half of the race and was on fire out there. So for Grant to work his way up through the pack, make the pass on Gus, make it stick, and take that overall win by 2 seconds over Johnny Gerard was nothing short than of a spectacular thing to watch this past weekend. We're going to get into the results after we let you know that Zach Tussle is also in part of bringing you this program. Zach Tussle works for Raymond James Financial. He's a racer and a financial advisor that helps his clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. Zach Tussle's been on the show. Zach Tussle is a good buddy of mine. Zach Tussle is a brand new father, and Zach Tussle is an A-class racer that you will see out on the racetrack near you. And that is why he is always my first recommendation to where to put your money. You know what I mean? So go to Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com, TussleInvestments.com, I believe is also, I think they go to the same website, but Zach Tussle can help you out. Shoot him a message, give him a call, go to his website, fill out the form, and talk with Zach Tussle. Also, as always, DPG, Dimmer's Precision Grading. I jumped ahead of myself. I was going to tell you that Brandon Dimmer is a racer. He actually had a ride day at his house this past weekend. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make it, but he also owns a grading company here in the Carolinas. So if you're looking for any project, big or small, they're doing large-scale contractor sites all the way down to clearing, adding gravel driveway, whatever you need at your house, they can tear your house down if you need them to. DimmersPrecisionGrading.com. They're on the social medias at Dimmers Precision Grading. Any of your grading or land clearing or sometimes demolition needs, hit up DPG, Dimmers Precision Grading. They can help you get it in and get it dialed. Let's move into this weekend's GNCC. It was a good racetrack. All week long, it said it was not supposed to rain, and then I did not pack my muck boots. I did not pack anything for rain, and I brought my dog with me. And then talked to my buddy Dustin Simpson on the way up. He was right behind me while we were driving up from North Carolina, and he lets me know that it's supposed to rain all weekend. I said, dude, did you not look at the weather? It's not supposed to rain at all. He said, oh, have you not looked at it lately? Pull it up. It says 70% chance of rain all day long on Saturday, 80% chance of rain all day long on Sunday, and then all of a sudden the tide shifts. Everything that we've seen lately has been dry and dusty, and then all of a sudden it looks like we're heading straight into a mutter. It did end up raining a little bit on Friday. I think it rained Thursday as well. But then it rained a little bit. The start of the Pro Quads was delayed just a little bit because of a brief storm that came in. It rained hard. I'm talking big old fat rain, sideways rain. Sometimes it seemed like rain came from the ground. It rained a lot in that short little segment. But other than that, couple little mist showers throughout the weekend, a little drizzle here and there, and that was it. So escaped the bulk of the rain. It was not a full-blown mutter. It was actually pretty good conditions. But the thing about that property is that it is all reclaimed land, in that I believe that they mined it all for the minerals and stuff that was underneath the dirt, and then they basically just fill it back in with dirt. So you just got a small layer of topsoil before you dig down to like clay and rock. So the track looked like chocolate cake. It looked like that loam that every dirt biker lives for. But as soon as you break through those first couple inches, it is slick as snot. And it did get a little slick out there. We saw some riders breaking traction. We got our YouTube video up of the race weekend. You can see some fishtailing going on, some sliding in the corners. But overall, it looked like a pretty good racetrack. Felt like a pretty good racetrack out there on the old beta, chasing everybody down. But round number 10 of the series, we return after summer break. It does seem like a lot of the championships have a pretty big gap. So there are no championships were wrapped up, but effectively it seems like those points leaders in most all the classes are kind of in points maintaining mode. There are still a couple championships on the line that we're going to talk about here in just a moment, but we returned to racing. We were back to it, and we were in Newburgh, West Virginia. Let's go through the overall results first before we get into some of the action. Grant Davis, as we mentioned before, on that 922 machine, goes out there and battles with his Landers KTM teammate, Gus Reardon. Gus Reardon was putting on a heater out in front. I think at one point the top 6 or 7 XC2 guys were the top 6 or 7 riders overall, and the XC1 leader was all the way back in the 7th or 8th place spot, which is absolutely insane. There is 1 minute between the takeoff between XC1 and XC2. So the XC2 riders do not physically have to pass their way up through the XC1 field. They just have to get within 1 minute of those riders. When we saw Josh Toth take the overall win, making GNCC history, I think he crossed the finish line physically in 3rd place. I think this past weekend, Grant Davis was physically the 6th or 7th rider to come through the finish line. But he comes in revving. We're standing there. Zach Heron, part of the Racer TV crew, he was the one getting the information fed to him from the headset, letting know that he did, in fact, win the overall by 2 seconds. And then we saw that camp start to go nuts, rightfully so. So Grant Davis, man. And this is a guy, Grant came into the XC2 class last year, and he had some good rides. He had some fourths in there. He ran up front. He looked like he could compete, but never really had the success as far as like podium finishes until the very last round. And at the very last round, we had some riders moving into the XC1 class. We had a little bit of shifting going on. And so Grant Davis goes and gets that that XC2 podium with a 3rd place finish to round out the year last year at Ironman. And everyone, and not everyone, but you know what I mean, the general consensus was this a fluke? Was it because everyone moved up? Was it because the season's kind of over, the championships are wrapped up? trying to make excuses. Well, Grant Davis says, I hear your excuses, and I raise you tenfold. It's obvious he put in the work in over the summer and throughout this year, because he came out this year absolutely swinging. And, he's clicked off 6 race wins so far in 10 rounds of racing. Right now he has a 42-point gap back to the number 2 spot. And I'm guilty of it myself. This year coming into the season, it seemed like it was going to be a battle between Gus Reardon and reigning champion Liam Draper. And then Gus Reardon comes out and wins the very first round, but who's on the podium right behind him? Grant Davis in that number 3 spot, with Liam Draper getting right in between them. So it's like, all right, we see our championship battle shaking out for what it is. And then all of a sudden, Grant comes out at the second round in Florida swinging and takes the win. From there, he went second, first, second, and then he's won out since then. So since round number 7, Grant Davis has been the winner, and Grant Davis has been on the overall podium. And now Grant Davis gets an overall win out here at round number 10, which is quite an impressive thing. As we mentioned, the youngest rider to do that in GNCC history that I am aware of. And like I said, he didn't do it easy. It's not like he led the entire time. He had to battle his way up through the pack and claim that number 1 spot. Johnny Johnson on that beta was riding in that number 2 spot for a while, riding in that top 3 for a little while. And like I said, Gus Reardon was way out in front of that one. Cody Barnes fell in the first or second turn off of the start, and he had to go through the entire pack and work his way back up into the number 3 spot. We saw Jason Tino running up there. We saw Brody Johnson mixing it up in those top few riders. We saw Toby Cleveland up there. There was a lot of really close racing going on and a lot of tight racing all the way throughout the board. I think at one time from 1st to 17th place was less than a minute of a gap as we headed into that one. Even finishing, the top 7 riders overall were all within a minute. So we talk about Gus Reardon, 2nd place in XC2, 7th place overall, but still within a minute of Grant Davis, the overall winner. So it was an insane day of racing. The racing has gotten so tight and so competitive. I think we're at the point where you can't rely on skill alone. You see the different training programs going on. You see the work that these riders are putting in, and that is what it takes to become a GNCC champion, and especially in the top ranks, the pro ranks up here, as we continue to see on a weekly basis, whether we're at GNCC or National Enduro or the Sprint Enduros or what have you. And so that level of competition is growing tighter and tighter, and it'll be interesting to see if maybe next year we got some people moving, maybe some people joining, maybe some people coming back, and we'll see if we'll see how tight that racing stays and how competitive this racing stays. I do see a lot of the things in the race results and kind of talking with people, chatting with people throughout the pits, saying that there are limited passing opportunities on the track. And one thing about the tracks that's kind of been called to attention by a lot of the riders this year is the abundance of stripe placards. Keep in mind, a couple years ago, GNCC threw out the double arrow rule, which actually came into contention over a protest over this weekend's race, where it was told during that protest that double arrows mean nothing anymore. And it kind of took me by surprise. And you look at the rules, and the double arrows aren't in there anymore except for in a checkpoint area. But the stripe placard, there is a lot of it throughout the woods, and it kind of takes a spot where there could be multiple lines to stay within 20 feet off of either side of the track, and it funnels everybody into one section. So some of those opportunities where there could be passes kind of get funneled down into these one-lined areas, or the tracks being a little bit tighter and making it hard to pass, and less field sections make it hard to pass. And you hear all that throughout the pits, but then you look at guys like Cody Barnes that went from last to 3rd place. You look at guys like Nick DeFeo, who works his way up, it seems like every race, through the 1 to 2 to sometimes even 3 classes ahead of him to do what he's been able to do to wrap up that 250A title. You look at guys that, like Johnny Gerard earlier this season, he crashed in the first corner and came back and won a race from the back of the pack. So it's interesting to see the passing opportunities, and like I said, the tracks may be getting tighter, but I think just the level of competition is also so tight, and that really takes the the skill and what these guys are doing to be able to get their way through the pack, and makes it all that much more impressive. But on the same exact track, you see people passing, you see people making their way through, and then it's so competitive. The level of competition is so high. As I'm out in the woods filming these guys, they're tight. They're wheel to wheel to wheel. We kind of take a break. If you watch the YouTube videos, I know you see all the people coming rapid fire, but really what it gets into is it seems like you get these packs that kind of form and break away from each other. So you'll get the first 3 or 4 riders together in a pack, and then there'll be 5-second gap back to that next pack of riders that might have 4th, 5th, and 6th place together, and then there's a little bit of pack, and then you might have your XC1 leader, and then 7th, 8th, 9th together, and it's like these packs get in a train, and they run with each other, and they push each other, and try to break away from that next pack. But when you're racing for position, when you're racing for these overall points, when you're racing the same people in your class that are all depending on bonuses and paychecks and all the implications right now in silly season that come with those good race results, it makes it tough to get the job done. And so these riders that are able to weave their way through the pack, it just makes it impressive to see what these riders are doing against their fellow best riders in the world. And I think that's the level of GNCC racing and racing across the board that we've been able to witness this year. I digress. Back to the overall results. Grant Davis takes the win. Johnny Gerard in the number 2 spot. Johnny Gerard came in with, I think, around a 50-point in the championship points lead. Really just has to maintain throughout the rest of the year, but he is still out there putting his head down and charging, working his way through the pack to get those race wins. He was your physical overall finisher. He took the checkered flag first, but it wasn't an easy day because Liam Draper was out back from his injury. He had knee surgery. We saw him on crutches at Snowshoe. He comes back and makes his XC1 debut. We mentioned earlier he is the reigning defending XC2 champion. He starts the year 2nd place in XC2. He competes in that XC2 class, gets surgery, misses some races. That obviously puts him out of the XC2 points. Well, since he does have that number 1 plate on his XC2 bike, since he was the reigning defending champion, that means he had this year to defend the title. Obviously, you miss some time, you miss some races, and now you're out of that championship battle. And since he only had this year to defend, next year we will see him in that XC1 class. Anyway, he made the decision to go ahead and move up himself and compete the rest of this year in that XC1 class to kind of get acclimated, and get acclimated he did. Liam Draper goes out there and I think shocks everyone. But if you think about this rider and where he came from and the level that he progressed to get to this and to get that number 1 plate in that XC2 class, you shouldn't be that dang surprised. But Liam Draper comes out, leads the way for a good majority of the beginning of the race. Had a little bit of issues that seemed like in there, let some people out in front of him. I know Lyndon Snodgrass was up in that top 3. Jordan Ashburn had made his way into the number 2 spot. Ben Kelly making his return. We're going to talk about him here in a second as well. He moves up, gets in those top 3 spots, but Liam Draper says, no. We're not going out like this. This isn't a fluke. I've seen the front of this racetrack. I've had clean air throughout this thing. I'm going to get my way back up in there, and that is what he did. He ends up finishing the day 2nd place on the day, putting in a solid ride in his XC1 debut. We talked about the level of progression that these riders make when they go from the XC2 to XC1. We saw Craig DeLong in XC2 for a number of years, moves up to XC1, 2nd year in, wins the championship. We look at Mike Wachowski, the rides that he has been putting together. I think his level has improved since going to the XC1 class. And now Liam Draper is going to be one of the next ones that moves into that XC1 class, and I think is going to latch onto those guys early on and get that racecraft and get that speed and be a threat there in that XC1 class as he proves out here in his debut. Obviously, a track and a property that he is very familiar with doesn't hurt, but I think Liam Draper, that little bit of confidence is going to go a long way as we close out these last few rounds of the GNCC series. Jordan Ashburn Finishes 4th place overall on the day, 3rd place in XC1 on the XC1 overall podium, or excuse me, on the XC1 podium, I should say, and then just barely misses the overall podium with Grant Davis getting in everybody's time, and Jordan will finish 4th place overall. Now, Jordan Ashburn, another former champion, won the championship a couple years ago. He comes back and just the model of consistency. But not only that, last weekend we were at the TKO Hard Enduro this year. It was a World Enduro or an FIM Hard Enduro, whatever their series is called. I should know it. It escapes me right now. Nevertheless, it was one of those rounds. In addition to the AMA National Championship, it was an FIM World Championship event as well. So all of the Europeans were there, all of the factory guys were there, all of the heavy hitters were there, all of the best in the world were there, competing in this completely different discipline, which is hard enduro. And you know who else was there? Jordan Ashburn. When they go out and set their qualifying times, I'm pretty sure Jordan Ashburn set like the fastest time. It was top 3 time, if it wasn't the fastest time. Gets through knockout race 1, gets through knockout race 2, and makes it straight into the main event once again. Jordan Ashburn has been in that main event of TKO several times, but the field starts with a couple hundred riders, and that main event on Sunday afternoon is 20 riders. 20 of the best riders that are riding the gnarliest conditions that they have to offer at the Trials Training Center, and Jordan Ashburn has routinely been able to make that final. He even did it on a KDX 200 a few years ago. But what I'm getting at is last weekend, Jordan Ashburn, for fun, shows up and competes not against the best in the country, but the best in the world at a completely different discipline at hard enduro, and he makes it to the championship final. Not only that, it's a 34, I think it's something weird, like 34 minutes plus a lap final. And Jordan Ashburn, for the first 3 laps of that, is right on the heels of Manny Lettenbichler and Tristan Hart and Teo and like all those dudes. And he's right on their tail. And then obviously start getting into traffic, start getting into the gnarly stuff. Because that last moto, they put you through the gnarliest stuff on the property, and you just do it in a short loop 5, 6, 7, 8 times, depending on how the time works out. But still, put in a very solid ride, had a very solid finish in that TKO final just 7 days prior, and then goes out and goes, oh no, boys. It's not just the technical stuff. I got the speed to match it. So Jordan Ashburn puts together a great ride out there, finishing top 5 overall, like I said, on the box in the XC1 class. Jordan Ashburn getting it done, proving that he's like a Swiss Army knife on the dirt bikes. He is very good at the dirt bikes, regardless of what conditions you're riding in. Another talk of the town, Ben Kelly. Ben Kelly, we've heard him in the Racer TV booth all year. A couple years ago, he comes out, wins 6 races in a row, decimating everybody that thought they had a chance at that championship. And then at a National Enduro, snaps his leg in half, hurts his shoulder, goes through multiple surgeries, multiple recovery times, comes back after that, still hurt, takes more time off the bike, gets more surgeries, and now took the time to rest up. We've seen him racing some J days up in the Northeast, and we've seen him back on the bike for quite some time, but this was his return to GNCC, racing at the highest level with all of these guys around him, a former champion as well. But Ben Kelly, the talk was, is he going to have that rider's rust? Is he going to be able to come on strong? Is he going to be Ben Kelly? And talking with a lot of riders throughout the thing, I mean, my opinion was I think Ben Kelly's going to be right up there in the mix, and that he was. He was up in those top 3 spots. He was up battling and really at points contesting for the race win and looking like the 530 machine that we are used to seeing out there on the GNCC racetracks. Towards the end of the race or towards the later stages of the race, started dropping back just a little bit. Those battles started getting a little bit tighter, and he ends up still finishing an impressive 5th place overall, 4th place in the XC1 class. Had the opportunity to speak to him a little bit after the race and just kind of mentioned that the longest that he has spent on a dirt bike since getting back on a dirt bike is 45 minutes. hadn't practiced 3 hours, hadn't rode for 3 hours, and then goes out and competes with the best in the world for 3 hours. So I think he just kind of got to a point where that started wearing on him just a little bit, but he showed that he has the speed to compete. And the speed did not go anywhere, and now it's just a matter of getting those 3-hour races back under his belt, and I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see the 530 taking a checkered flag first with these 3 rounds remaining this season. Now that he had that 3 hours under his belt, you kind of weigh the expectations versus reality, and hey, now we're right back in the mix of it. So got to be another confidence boost there for Ben Kelly. Stu Baylor would end the day 6th place overall. Saw him get off to about a mid-pack start and kind of work his way up through there. Stu, as he has been known for in the past, took a little bit of a different pit strategy. He pitted a lap early than everyone else, and it was kind of one of those moves where it's like, do we play this early? Do we play this late? Because the start goes in right at the 4-mile marker. So at this past weekend's race, once you go through the start chicanes and you get back onto the track, a couple turns into the woods, you see the 4-mile marker. We typically see the pro pits right before the finish line or right after the finish line. This one was 4 minutes into the racetrack. So then by the time you make it back to your pits for the first time, you've not only done a complete lap, you've done a complete lap plus an additional 4 miles that it took to get back to where that start took place. So Stu, a little bit of a different operating strategy, decided to pit early so that way when everyone else came in, and obviously he's pitting early, kind of puts you behind the pack or off of that pace of those packs that are picking up. But it allows you to next time around where everyone else was really tight together and they're all going to come into the pits, it'll give you the opportunity to maybe blow by, make some passes in the pit since you had already used that time and you knew you used that time. So you're making that time up that lap and use that to get around as everyone else comes into the pits the next time. Had a little bit of a gas spill. Think it might have affected the boys just a little bit. Cannot confirm that, but did see that dump tank kind of stick open and spray some gas a little bit. But he would end the day 6th place overall, just off of the XC1 podium as well. Finishing just behind Ben Kelly there. And then your 7th place finisher overall, Gus Reardon. We talked about Gus leading the way in the overall for the first several laps of the race. He would end up in the number 7 spot overall, 2nd place XC2, but as we mentioned, within a minute of the overall winner. So that's how tight everyone was out there Sunday while they were racing. Rui Barbosa stoked when he came across the line. He was on the rev limiter and just kind of looked relieved. We've seen him coming back from a torn Achilles this year and also making the step up into that XC1 class. So Rui put on a ride that he was proud of. 8th place finisher overall. Cody Barnes, we mentioned, fell at the start, gets behind everybody, works his way up through almost everybody, finishes 9th place overall, and rounding out your top 10 riders overall was Lyndon Snodgrass, who we saw running at the front of the pack. Lyndon Snodgrass, one of those guys looking for a ride next season, so looking to make a statement this past weekend. He did that. Not sure what the issue was between being at the front of the pack and finishing 10th overall, but as I mentioned, they were all still really close. But, Lyndon put in a solid ride and definitely turned some heads, leading some or being up front with that front pack for a lot of the race out there. One thing we're going to check in real quick, your 13th place overall finisher, Nick DeFeo, wraps up the 250A championship here once again. He will need one more race to hopefully wrap up the overall or the top amateur overall for this season. So 250A, he finishes 13th place overall. Craig DeLong was in 11th, and Josh Strang on a brand new beta motorcycle, the 480, going out there, getting it done. Not quite sure if the settings were right, not quite sure if they had everything figured out. He only had 2 hours on the bike, but ended up having a really good race. Looked like he had a lot of fun out there, and seems like it's a very good building point to kind of build for these next 3 rounds. And then what lays on the line after that, I guess we shall see. But for now, he is back on the bike. He is back out at the races. And as I mentioned, in the 18th season of his professional career over here for the former GNCC champion, Josh Strang out there. I guess since we've gone to 13th overall, we might as well say Mike Wachowski 14th overall and Jason Tino 15th overall. So to kind of break that down by classes and let you know how it all ended up, taking the XC1 win was your points leader, Johnny Gerard, getting it done. In the number 2 spot, it was newcomer to the XC1 class, Liam Draper, taking the number 2 spot. And then former champion Jordan Ashburn would round out your XC1 podium with a 3rd place finish. In XC2, it was Grant Davis taking the overall win and the XC2 win. Gus Reardon would hold on for the number 2 spot out there in the XC2 class, and then Cody Barnes, your 3rd place finisher. Brody Johnson, 4th place in that XC2 class. We saw Brody on betas through the first half of the year. Obviously, he is not on a beta now. It seems like over summer, raced a couple local races, and that is when we learned he is on a different red bike now. So started on a Honda, had the fill-in ride there for a little bit with beta when Jonathan Johnson was out with a foot injury for a few rounds there. And coming back out of summer break, back on a Honda, has a very, very solid ride. 4th place in that XC2 class to finish out the day. Moving down to XC3, Dakota DeVore and Jack Walker were locked horns in a battle once again, but then Dakota DeVore would go on to take over the overall lead in that XC3 class and go on and grab yet another win in that XC3 class. Jack Walker comfortably in the number 2 spot on the Beta 125 machine, and then good friend of the program, Dustin Simpson, would be your 3rd place finisher, rounding out the podium in that XC3 class. We talked about our top amateur. It was Nick DeFeo getting it done once again. In the number 2 spot, it was Jason Tino out of the 250A class for your 2nd top amateur overall. And then our 3rd overall amateur in the Open A class was Swole Cole Whitmer, getting it done to round out your top 3 riders overall. Taking a look down now at the morning races, the WXC class and how they shook out in the morning. Brandy Richards was on a tear. Brandy Richards was out in front. Rachel Archer was on her rear tire, hunting her down every time we saw them on the track. Rachel Archer was making progress, staying right there with her, looking for a way to get by her. Rachel Archer would eventually make the pass late in the race and take over the overall lead, stretch the gap of her lead to about 10 seconds, and then just a few miles before the finish line would have to pit in order to not run out of fuel. So they pulled her over and gave her a splash of fuel just before the finish line. While they were doing that, Brandy Richards was able to get by her, and then with a short track and not enough time to chase her back down and make the pass stick, Rachel Archer would hold on for 2nd place overall. That is a tight battle in that WXC class, but mainly between Rachel Archer and Corey Steed. But Brandy Richards has been a mix into that class as well. So Corey Steed does go on to finish 3rd place and save some valuable points. She mentioned on the podium she just dislocated her shoulder or separated her shoulder, one of the two, within the past couple weeks. So she had some ice on her shoulder immediately after the race. So for her, locked in this WXC battle to go out there and salvage podium points, 3rd place points. It was a good day for Corey Steed as well. Rachel Archer, very disappointed, very bummed out to end up with that 2nd place finish, but had she run out of gas, who knows when they get some gas to her, and then Corey Steed finishes in front of her, then she loses points in the championship race, and who knows when she got back out on the track. So kind of one of those situations like damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you lose the win by taking fuel, but you save yourself from running out of fuel and dropping even farther back in the ranks by taking fuel. So it's one of those things that we're just going to have to keep continuing to see how this WXC class plays out. But this past weekend, it was Brandy Richards taking the win, Rachel Archer in the number 2 spot, and Corey Steed in 3rd. So that is how it shakes up. We look at our XC1 points. Johnny Gerard out in front with 262 points. Stu Baylor is in that number 2 spot with 209 points. So if Johnny Gerard is able to put a 60-point gap going into the next round, he will, in fact, wrap up that XC1 championship. So right there on the bubble, that 60-point mark. So could potentially be wrapped up at the next race. If not, we'll carry it on and see when that thing gets a nail in it. Jordan Ashburn third in XC1 points, but looking at the overall points, I do believe that it is Grant Davis who currently holds the number 3 spot on the overall points lead, which is pretty damn impressive from an XC2 rider. Crazy to see him that high up there in the points, but Grant Davis, your 3rd place rider overall in the overall points. Jordan Ashburn 4th in overall points. Craig DeLong 5th as we head into the final 3 races of the season. As we take a look now to the XC2 points, it is Grant Davis that leads the way with class points, 276 points, to Angus Reardon's 234 points. So a good little gap right there for Grant Davis as we look to close out the year. Cody Barnes in the number 3 place spot as far as points are concerned in that XC2 race. And then Liam Draper, having missed a couple races, still sits in the number 4 spot. So Cody Barnes in the 3rd place spot, Liam Draper in 4th, and Thad Duvall in 5th. A big bummer for Thad Duvall this past weekend. He came out on rails as well in that number 2 spot, holding his own and staying with that front pack where he would pull off the track. And why would he pull off the track? Is because his pinky was headed east. Yours and mine, they're north. Thad Duvall's was taking a little bit of a vacation. His was heading directly east, so ended up breaking that pinky finger, which is a major bummer. He tried to grit it out, hold on for a couple laps before he said his hand started going numb, and he went to see the SOS medical tent and Dr. Tanner to get that pinky straightened out and taken care of. But if you saw the pictures of it, it was pretty gnarly, which is a bummer because Thad Duvall was on a tear this past weekend. Now, keep in mind, these points do not include the drops. Obviously, there are drops in the XC3 class. So as we get into that, Jack Walker currently leads the way, 257 points to Dakota DeVore's 255 points. But once you start factoring in drops, I think that points race is even closer than we think, and it might have the edge to Dakota DeVore, who has won 6 races on the season to Jack Walker's 3. So that is going to be a battle. That is going to be a fight here in these final few rounds before we put a bow on this 2024 season. So, yeah. There you have it. As we're looking at it here, we'll take a look at our WXC points. We talked about that. Once again, they get a couple drops as well, but right now Rachel Archer leads the way, 250 total points, to Corey Seeds, 228 total points, and then in 3rd place, Brandy Richards with 227 points. Now, I can't do math on the fly, but if there is 2 drops, Rachel Archer is going to drop a 4th and a 5th, and Corey Steed, as it stands right now, will drop a 9th, and it looks like a 4th. So that battle is still far from over as well and is going to be tight. Rachel Archer, 4 wins on the season to Corey Steed's 2 wins on the season. Brandy Richards with 3 wins of her own. As it stood right now, she would drop a 5th and a 7th. So right there in the mix as well. These top 3 are going to have to grit it out and battle throughout the rest of the season if they want to have that number 1 plate in the WXC class. So that is how this past weekend went. We got some other storylines. We got some stuff going on. Not really sure where to fit it all in. Silly season is upon us, and there are no lack of abundance of rumors circulating for silly season. As always, I'm not gonna get into it right now, but we'll put all that silly season information together and we'll bring it to you at a later date. But let me tell you something. there is some stuff floating around that is going to shake the off-road world with some of these changes that could be going on heading into next season. So stay tuned, keep tight. We're going to be back in your life on a weekly basis. We're going to work some interviews in here as well. But once we bring up the silly season stuff, get prepared, buckle up, take a seat, because it is going to get crazy. My summer break ended 2 weeks earlier. As you guys might have seen, went out to the Vegas to Reno, the best in the desert race out there. Stu Baylor and his RM Red Bear Racing Kawasaki team put a couple of teams together, went out to race Vegas to Reno. They had a quad team and they had a bike team. It was my first race event on the West Coast, and let me tell you something, it is a completely different ball game out there. It's a completely different world. So that was super fun to be a part of, to go out there and film some of that. Stu Baylor raced the bikes with Rachel Archer, her dad Kevin Archer, and then the week of, we called in the ringer, two-time Vegas to Reno winner and desert racing legend Jacob Augerbright was out there and came to race with us. Ended up blowing a shock bolt out in the first two sections that punched a hole in the airbox, so I had to swap a subframe, an airbox, put the shock back together. Cost a lot of valuable time that would ultimately take them out of the race really before the race even really got going in the nuts and bolts of it, which was a bummer to see. But when you look at the times, like, they could have been competitive, and so the everything we kept hearing out there seemed like next year is going to be a go as well. It looks like they want some revenge out there. The quad team did really good, led by J.D. Higgins out there. The quad team, they put in a solid ride. They won their class, which was the amateur quad class, but then finished second overall for quads, so second in the pro quads. So it was an overall really cool experience. 555 miles of racing through the desert from Vegas to Reno, and all sorts of fun in between. That was a trip I will not soon forget, and a really cool one to be a part of. Hopefully we can bring you some more video footage of that week here to come. Last weekend was at the TKO. TKO, if you have not been to the TKO Enduro down at the Trials Training Center, I recommend you try to get out there, because it is always such a good time. It's always so interesting to me. And it's also crazy how involved in the off-road dirt bike world I am. And then I go to one of those things, and it's like, I don't know anybody. It's like a whole different world in and of itself, in a niche group of a niche sport. So if you have not been to TKO, I encourage you to go to a TKO, because you'll look at some of that stuff and wonder how you would climb up it on your hands and feet. And then all of a sudden you see these guys riding dirt bikes over it like it's nothing. Well, actually, the first couple of days you get to see the amateurs do it, and it looks relatable. But then you watch the pros hit those same sections the amateurs struggled in, and they make it look like you, or excuse me, I shouldn't assume that about you. I don't know who's listening, but look like me riding down a gravel road on a casual joyride. So it is a really fun one to watch. Manny Lettenbichler and Tristan Hart had one of the craziest battles I've ever seen, and they did it in the TKO finals, swapping back and forth right in front of the crowd on the hill climb several times. You can find those videos on our YouTube channel as well. Speaking of YouTube channels, I think here in the coming weeks, we might create a separate channel here for the podcast itself. So be on the lookout for that. If you do listen to it on YouTube, we might be in a different destination, just because it seems like having the audio, long-form versions of the show kind of hurts the algorithm with the video stuff. So might create two separate accounts. That way keep the video stuff separate, keep the podcast stuff separate, and we'll let you know if that change occurs if you are one of the YouTube listeners. Thank you from wherever you're listening from. We appreciate it, and sorry for the break, but now we're back. And yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following On the Pipe podcast. We will see you with the next one to talk about some more off-road racing.